I spoke to my sister, who's actually a wise counsel, and she said to me, "So here you are, Fee, you're passing up the opportunity to get to know someone more, a guy that you think is lovely, who you can see is very kind-hearted. You're giving up the chance to go out with someone that you think you see potential with. Why are you letting your ex-husband still control you?"
Welcome to Your Second Act, the podcast that proves that life doesn't have to end at 40, 50, or even 60, because when it comes to living your best life, age is just a number. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode and thanks so much for tuning in. Now, I have been really excited about today's story. I met Fee a few months ago through a mutual friend and we just got chatting and she told me her remarkable story about how she actually met her current husband. Now, you know I'm all about sharing different stories, but her story is completely different, one that I actually had never heard of before. Now, imagine you separate from your partner and you've been together for quite a long time and you've had a couple of kids, but unfortunately the marriage falls apart. Not for any reason, but you just grow apart. And then you decide after a few months you want to get out there again and you want to see what's happening in the dating world. And it's quite daunting because you haven't dated anyone in probably 15 years. So Fee meets Graham. And Graham has just recently broken up with his wife as well. So the two of them start dating. And now this is where the story starts to get interesting. Graham's ex-wife and Fee's ex-husband are also dating. And both couples are not aware of this. And this is where the story becomes super interesting. So let's just get straight into it because I absolutely loved it. It was, I guess, like a movie. And it's really interesting the way they have dealt with co-parenting, blended families, which a lot of us in this stage of life do deal with. So I'm just going to get straight into this episode with Fee. So welcome to Fee's Second Act. Hi, Fee. Thanks so much for joining us on Your Second Act. And I'm so excited to be hearing your story because I feel it's an astonishing story. You do hear about these situations where couples end up with each other's partners. And now I just want to preface by saying I am not talking about swingers, but just in case the audience are thinking, okay, you're swapping partners. But for you, this pairing completely happened out of the blue. And that's what makes it so interesting. And when we met up a few months ago, our mutual friend Emily said, you have to tell Michelle the story about how you met your husband. And you kind of didn't want to really go on about it because you thought your story really wasn't that interesting. But I disagree because when you did divulge, I thought, oh my gosh, this story needs to be shared. So can we just start from the beginning? How did this scenario occur?
Absolutely. So I'm going to take you back to sort of 2011, 2012, 2013, that little time period. And happily married to my now ex-husband, Matt. But things were starting to be a bit rocky for us. We just basically, we amicably split in 2012 because we both felt we'd just run out of road, run out of communication. Our lives were sort of on side by side, but on separate tracks, I'd say. We had two boys, and I always thought that I think we both realised we were on separate tracks, but I thought we would join back together, be on the same line once kind of the boys had grown a little bit more and become a bit more independent. So we had that brave conversation about separating. We actually went to marriage guidance, and the counsellor couldn't understand because we both respected each other, we cared for each other. We had all the bones, we'd had the history, we'd been brought up similarly, same sort of classes of parents. Our parents were still together, but it just wasn't working. And we actually decided to be really honest. So amicably, we separated in 2012. Um, and that's, even though it's amicable, it's tough. Actually, what I realized was I'd lost my marriage, which is a real unity. It's my family, we had all the pieces, but they weren't all together anymore. And it took a while to sort of get over that. The boys and I came back to Australia, actually a happy place for us for the Christmas of 2012, 2013. And, they were quite sure. They'd seen an advert on Match.com on TV on New Year's Day or something in Australia, and they thought that was a good thing for their mum to do. So I took that with me, that they were ready for me to move on. And maybe that was sort of the push that I needed as well. Um, so we're moving forward a little bit, March 2013. And I, out of the blue, had an email from a guy, one of the dads at the rugby club that my son played rugby at, saying, if ever we wanted to go to the movies or go out for a drink or something like that, um, get in touch. He'd also recently separated from his wife. It was a shock to that family. They'd been married for 20 odd years. And it was completely out of the blue for him. He wasn't expecting it. I'd heard on the grapevine that he hadn't taken the news that well, so had been quite poorly with that news. Certainly affected his mental health quite seriously. So getting an email and thinking, oh, I've just licked my own wounds. Do I really need to be hearing somebody else's tragedy? I was a bit unsure, but equally, I kind of thought, well, it's a safe space to test going back out, sitting opposite someone you kind of know a little bit about, but not much. And, what's the worst that you can happen? Thanks, but no thanks. So we went for dinner and I sat opposite this man who was very charming, clearly had been hurt and devastated to some extent of the loss of his family. So whilst our reactions were probably different and we were coming from a different place, one from a joint decision, another person from the decision made for him, we weren't we had common things. It wasn't that bad. It was okay. And actually, he was really smiley, and you can see very quickly the character of someone. So I'm a great believer that, first impressions count and they last. So it wasn't a really hard decision for me to say, when he asked, would we like to go on a second date, for me to say yes. There were sort of there were a couple of conditions to this. And I sort of fairly early on said, do you like dogs? I like dogs. I like big dogs. That's a tick from me because I've got two big Labradors. So,
Right.
so a few nights later, we went on a second date. In between that, my youngest son, who was 9 at the time, came home and said to me, Mum, I think Dad has got a girlfriend. So Felix, why do you say that? Well, when we were there on the weekend, bearing in mind this must have been a Wednesday night because that was our midweek night that they went to their dad's. When we were there on the weekend, I saw his candles had burnt down. And when I was there last night, his candles had burnt down even more. Inspector Felix was on the case.
He knew his father was romancing because of the
Well, I guess
candles.
I guess ultimately a single guy is not going to be lighting candles for a dinner for
Probably
one.
not.
So, and I
Yeah.
think that's what Felix had concluded. So I sort of dismissed it because I thought it was a bit comical. Um, and so, I was planning my second date that following weekend. It was a weekend that the boys weren't with me, they were with their dad. So Inspector Felix decided to look at his dad's mobile phone when he was at his dad's house the next time. And he picked up some text messages that was sort of clearly to a lady because he was calling this person baby and travel safely. And it was like, so when Felix came back on the Sunday afternoon and said, no, mum, he's definitely going out with someone because I've now spied his text messages. It was like,
Wow.
wow, I think I actually ought to take this a little bit more seriously.
Ladies, I am so excited to be co hosting a special event next February in Manly called Your Second Act, Thriving in Midlife. Join me and the amazing Emma from Emma's Nutrition on Saturday, the 1st of February, for a transformative one-day experience overlooking the stunning harbour. This is your chance to reconnect, recharge, and be inspired by an incredible lineup of speakers while enjoying delicious, healthy meals and snacks prepared by Emma herself. It's time to celebrate you and embrace this exciting chapter of life. Head to the show notes for the link to the event, and we can't wait to see you there. At this point, how long had you been separated?
Probably 9 or 10 months.
Oh, okay, so a while.
So a little bit of time. It wasn't
Yeah.
immediate. And so I'd had a successful second date myself. I was starting to think, this guy's really nice. And, that kind of first date nerves had melted away. Second date, we were feeling a little bit more comfortable with each other. You know, just talking about our backstories, things that our values and beliefs, I guess, which we don't know we're talking about, but that's what we share when we're meeting people for the first time that we're trying to make a good impression with or who we are as people. And so my third date, I said to him, I think Matt, my ex-husband, has got a girlfriend. And in a funny way, it kind of gave me in my head permission. Not that I felt like I should have permission, but there was something about, well, if you're doing this and you're ready to do it, then why aren't I? So it gave me in my head, I guess, permission. And I was telling Graham, my husband, my date, um, about the story. And I said, but clearly whoever he's seeing is traveling at the moment, because he's wishing this person a safe trip. And he sat back in the chair and went, my ex-wife has traveled back to South Africa and is now for the school holidays, and they're all coming back in the next few days. And it was like the previous information that other mums at rugby had told me about their interactions as parents on the side of the rugby pitch. It didn't take much for the penny to drop and for me to think,
Wow.
oh my goodness, Matt's now seeing Graham's wife, and I'm now sat in front having dinner with her husband.
Oh my gosh. What a scenario to try and get your head around. So then what happened? How did you move forward after that?
It was a bit rocky, shall we
Yeah, I can
say.
imagine.
It was such a flood. I actually, we're talking 11, 12 years ago. So it's quite a long time. But I think when you've had some kind of strong emotional reaction to something, you actually, I don't know if it's trauma, I wouldn't say it's as deeply as that, but sitting talking to you now, it actually brings those feelings back that I was really shocked because I just started to get my confidence. I started to trust. I think trust is a massive thing for me. And I'd started to trust again, not only my own instincts, but the idea of trusting someone else. And suddenly those just got wiped from underneath me. It was like somebody was pulling a rug. Um, and I went home and we finished the evening. I went home. I wanted to talk to Matt and say, is this true? Bearing in mind, he'd not said anything to me and I was only piecing things together. So I didn't know whether the facts were correct or my wires were crossed. but it was just all too much of a coincidence for it not to be those things. So we did speak about it, and it did unfold that um it was
Oh,
Sonia.
wow.
And with that, I did go into panic mode, and I just thought, as far as I understand, 11, 12 years ago, scammers didn't really exist. But I actually did think, that kind of, when you have this kind of fear of trust and trust breaking down, you kind of almost go, oh, we're being, this couple have set us up, they're after our money. I didn't know enough about anybody other than my ex-husband in the whole of the situation. Because I do want to say we didn't really know each other as couples. We'd met because our boys played rugby together, but they'd only been across to the UK from South Africa where they'd lived for maybe a year at this point. So
So you
it
you only ever really crossed paths with them at rugby? Like, hi, goodbye. It wasn't like you were even
absolutely
friends.
not at all. And also, to sort of dilute it a little bit more, my other son, Felix the investigator, played football. So the elder son, Will, played rugby, but I didn't. I took Felix to football more than I took him to rugby. So I really didn't know these people. I was my girlfriends, who were the mums on the side of the rugby pitch with their sons, knew more about the interactions that were going on than I did, because I just didn't see. And also, that 1 week on, off, 1 week on, sort of on as a parent, co-parenting, you know, I was there even less really because I was juggling football sessions and rugby sessions at the same time.
So, okay, so you've had the conversation with your then current husband, and it's come out that he is seeing your date's wife, and then you've told him, well, I'm also dating or starting to get to know her then husband. How did he
Correct.
react to that news? My gosh.
Um, it's a
It's
mouthful,
even
right?
hard to follow, isn't it? Yeah.
um, he was quite surprised as well. So probably as much as I was surprised that he was dating Sonia, he was really surprised that I was dating Graham. Yeah. And my initial reaction after that was, this is wrong. This is like some kind of, I don't know, 1970s swingers kind of
Yeah,
film or something. This
for
is just
sure.
so not me. I am English, I'm middle class, I'm respectable, I hold a really serious job. This is not me. We don't have pampas grass in our garden, which apparently is a sign of swingers.
Really?
So I'm
I
told.
I've never heard that. There you go.
So I panicked and I just thought, I need to call everything off. This is way, I've allowed my feelings to run away with me. This is, this will teach you a lesson. That inner kind of voice is going, well, you should learn from it. So, the lovely day that I'd been on, we were now planning to sort of spend the day together. And we decided to go to Cambridge, which is a beautiful city not too far from where we live in the UK. And of course, that all got cancelled. And, you know, I just wanted to kind of go into a hole because I then thought everybody else is going to know about it. They're all laughing at me. So I, completely overreacted, shall we say. Um, but I spoke to my sister, who's actually a wise counsel, and she said to me, so here you are, Fee, you're passing up the opportunity to get to know someone more, a guy that you think is lovely, who you can see is very kind hearted, um, and you potentially could see a future with. And you're passing that up to allow, because of Matt, um, going out with his wife, they could just be going out for a few months. It could just be a fling, it could be passionate, and then it could be over. But you're giving up the chance to go out with someone that you think you see potential with. Why are you letting your ex-husband still control you? And I sat back and thought, do you know what? She's absolutely right. So I did a bit of a phone call and reversed the day out in Cambridge. Do you still fancy going?
But what were his thoughts on the whole situation, as in your Graham, your current husband?
Yeah. He was really sad. He wasn't he he was much more, I guess he didn't react in the way I reacted. And maybe his feelings were a little bit numb at that time. Um, he he was shocked, of course, you would be, who wouldn't be? But he was more invested now in the idea of us moving forward. So he was really sad that I'd said, look, this has got to end. It hasn't really started, but before we, hurt our feelings, let's end it now. He was really sad with that, but accepted it because, it was an unusual situation for all of us. Um, so we did resurrect the date to Cambridge and we had yes, another lovely day together. But this time our conversation was dominated about the situation and what was going on. And it felt like, in a funny way, two people gossiping because we both knew the characters that were playing out, on the other side.
And obviously their relationship probably was further along than yours, would you say?
Yes, I would say that. There was a few things that, trying to get hold of their dad, the boys trying to get hold of their dad and couldn't, with time zones and just small windows where you can speak, and he was going to be available and then he wasn't. There were just things that I thought, you know what, I think somebody else was taking that time. So I'm not, I do think their relationship started quite a while before ours did.
When you worked it out, were there any feelings of jealousy? Because all of a
Mm.
sudden, your husband is now with somebody else.
That and
Yes.
you've started to hear things about.
Yeah.
And I'd heard things from my girlfriends about her. And I was also hearing things from her, estranged husband. So there were some things that I heard that I just thought, gosh, that is so not like my ex husband. So if she's looking for someone to go out dancing and partying all night, well, you know, that won't happen. But I don't think I was jealous in any way because I don't think I'm a jealous person. We all have jealous tendencies, absolutely. But I knew my relationship, I was in a really different place because I'd come to peace with my relationship ending. And so it is hard to accept that your husband, your current husband, even though you're not together, he's moving on. But yeah, I think we were okay. I was okay, really. The other thing I was okay about was there was this kind of backstory that I could tap into. So I knew from Graham that actually she was a really good mum. And when you've got two children, kind of your
Yeah.
ex-husband's old enough to look after himself. And, if he gets caught out, well, that's kind of his lookout. But for me, it was all about where were my boys, were they going to be in a safe space with somebody who was kind and loving? Um, if their dad was choosing to be with that person, how would they react? So that was something that I was concerned about. And equally, Graham was also concerned about that for his own children. So his daughter had just turned 15, um, and his son was, well, the same age as well. So they were 11. 12 maybe. And so again, it was like the safety of our children really in all of this, which in many ways, one of the advantages when you did get your head around it was you could understand that and you had that backstory to know kind of warts and all. And it was down to the discretion of the ex-partner on how much they chose to tell the new person. Because, if you really want to, we've been married for 13 years, Graham and Sonia have been married for 20. So that's a long history from both parties to, know the
Absolutely.
ins and outs of that individual.
And the way I see it is your children, I mean, I want to know how they reacted to the story, but for them, they were constantly with their parents. So from one house to another, there was always a parent. It wasn't
Absolutely.
like, yeah, they were away from one of their parents for a long period of time. So
You're either
again,
with your
there's
mum or your
another.
dad. So
Yeah.
both
So
sets of, so all four of them moved a bit like a shoal of fish because we aligned it. So each set of parents had a weekend off the kids.
so
So
you had the 4 at the one time.
yeah, we did.
Wow.
On weekends. In the week, they obviously met up midweek with either their mum or their dad. And we used to encourage um, each other to have, so each dad say, to have dad time. So they were, my boys always went out for dinner with their dad on a Wednesday, or he'd run around and do things with them. And we used to, and Graham used to do the same with his kids.
Wow. So
But on a
Fee,
weekend,
how
all four together.
all 4 together. Okay, I wanna know how they reacted when you told them.
Um, it's sort of hard to remember. I do remember that my kids, I'd I'd sort of, because the children were, they're such a big part of my happiness, and my happiness was also their happiness. So I remember when I realized that, we'd done the Cambridge thing and we thought, let's make a bit more of this. And I then invited Graham and his kids over for lunch and for dinners, so that they didn't really know probably that we were dating at that point. It was still, private to them. But there would be no reason why we wouldn't get together because of the connection through sport. And then I said to my boys, you know, do you like Graham? And involve them almost in the decision. It seems a bit mad because it could have backfired, but it was like, I think he's asked me out on a date, even though we'd had the date. I think, I might go out on a date. What do you think I should do? So they felt like they were on my journey with me, and they were old enough to do that. And the reason why I did it was they ultimately had to pick. They saw their mum. I'm not somebody who's afraid to share my feelings. So I thought that, when I was sad about their dad splitting up, we put a song on in the car that they now take the mickey out of every time. They put it on every single playlist. I cannot stand the song anymore. And so we kind of did all of that sharing of emotion, because I just felt that if they saw me cry, they knew that it was okay if they wanted to cry. They didn't have to be these buttoned up guys who couldn't share their feelings. And I'd brought them up to be like that anyway. Um, so they were helping me make the decision. Also, that's what they thought about where I was going with Graham, and moving it on. And for Ashley and Ryan, it was really different for them, Graham's kids. So, Ashley was turning 15. She was very much into sort of high street fashion, which is something her mum, from what I understood at the time, wasn't really in. So, I love clothes, so we could go shopping together, and we could just form this kind of, you know, bond in that way. It might be a superficial bond, but at 15, no, a girl doesn't need anything too deep or anything like that. So that's sort of what we did. And the four of them unbelievably accepted the situation. They never
Wow.
questioned it.
And they get on and
There's
to this day?
it was only it was a few years ago. So we're now talking 26, turning 25 later in this year, and Felix is 21. So, they're young adults now. Ashley has her own family, so we have a granddaughter, and she's just recently got married. So that has been interesting because we've all come together as parents in that situation.
And how was
Um,
that? How do you manage that when you have those events? Or was this the first one since you really
First
got
one, and
together?
why we're yeah, first major event. Um, and while you were looking after kids, so, the kids couldn't drive, so dad would turn up on the driveway to pick them up. Either dads would turn up to pick up their own kids, so to speak. Um, and so then they all learn to drive, and then they stop having sleepovers because they can drive home and all of those things. So you actually, as the years go on, you have less and less to do with your exes. Um, and we'd had earlier in the year, our granddaughter had had her christening, and it was the first time we'd probably seen each other for, oh, I don't know, a good 12, 18 months. And it felt awkward. You go to catch someone's eye to say hello and they don't look at you at the same time. And I just don't do awkward. It was like, come on now. So we'd invited them over for drinks for Felix's 21st. So that was sort of the first time of getting us all back together again. Um, and then we had an occasion to sort of a pre-wedding occasion to celebrate the wedding, which they came to, which was really good fun. And so coming to the wedding day, it was so funny because obviously my husband is busy being father of the bride. Um, so kind of like I'm hanging out with the other parents because, the groom's parents and my ex-husband and his wife, and here I am. But
Oh my
it
gosh.
worked really well. It worked really
Oh,
well. And
great.
I I was chatting to Matt with a glass of champagne in hand, after the ceremony and while they're taking photographs. And of course, the mum, his wife, is off taking photographs with the father of the bride. So
Yes.
we
Your
still have
husband,
these,
yeah.
yeah, we still have these traditions that
Oh,
we kind of go by, don't we?
of
And
course.
we were stood chatting, and Matt's mum was at the wedding as well, and she was clearly telling our story to these people, these ladies that she was talking to. And Matt said to me, "Look, mum's telling our story because these two ladies turned round with their faces and their mouths wide open."
For sure.
But with like a gasp, because here we were civilly stood laughing with each other, drinking champagne at our stepdaughter's wedding.
Wow. So I remember you saying that you both got married around the same time. You got remarried. So even
Correct.
that in itself, it's like you've kind of, the four of you have done everything side by side. That is also so unusual in itself.
Don't worry, they weren't
Incredible.
invited to our wedding as guests, you'll be pleased to
Uh,
know. We weren't
oh,
that close
okay.
at that time.
She wasn't your bridesmaid and
Really,
groomsman.
no,
Okay.
no chance.
Yeah, that because that would have been strange.
Yeah,
Um,
that would have been weird.
so so now that you've been with your current husband for quite a while, how do the two marriages compare? Like, do you, obviously you must compare your current husband with your ex-husband. Are they very different people?
Yes, they are. They are. And it's sort of $1 million question, isn't it, really? Because I feel really fortunate and definitely very lucky to have had the opportunity to get married again. And I think I said earlier, one of the things that I mourned was my marriage, not having the unity, um, and that togetherness. And I guess that was important to me without even realizing. So for and for also Graham, my husband now, we both felt the same, that we'd lost, you lose your partner, but we'd lost our marriage. Um, and so it was quite an easy decision for us to sort of we always said, well, to be married, you have to get married. So the getting married bit was something we did, and it was just in the town hall, and we didn't tell anyone we were going to do it. And we went off and did it. And then we had a big party that we said was we got married just after Christmas. So we said it was a Christmas party. And we just like invited everybody over as friends to the party, and it was a celebration, and we announced it. Um, but comparing the two, I think you have to look at yourself, and that was something I did do. Also, I would say back in 2011, 2012, we didn't know the words perimenopausal. I was in my early 40s. I was hugely hormonal at the time. Um, and I, without a doubt, think that made a massive impact on my first marriage. I don't think I was actually very nice to be with. I had a really big job. I was managing a really massive team. I was my area of the business turned over 165 million. So I had huge responsibilities. I was really enjoying my career, but perhaps we only have so much. We can only take so much, can't we? So I would say that, the focus in my life were my job, my kids, keeping the house together, my husband. And maybe some of those weren't quite in the right order, but they felt like they were in the right order for me at the time. And so I knew that I needed to restack that going into a second marriage. I didn't, it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to give up my career and, be indebted to him. Not at all. I'm a total independent woman. Um, but I knew that I needed probably to just think about how I process stuff and, the short fuse that I probably had, I needed to work on making that longer. So I think it was work on myself that I did.
Yeah. Of course, and like anybody, as you do go through, you know, this stage in your life, the change in your hormones, you change as a person as well. And I'm sure that has had a huge impact on the marriage that you have at the moment because maybe through all of that, you discovered yourself. So you bring
Yeah.
something new to the relationship that maybe you weren't able to with your ex. But, I was thinking the other day, it's interesting how two couples came together. So there's a commonality there. And even though they're probably not alike, but you have to wonder the four of you must have something in common that you're attracted to because you were both attracted to other people and then I hate saying swapped because you haven't swapped, but you know what
You
I
can
mean?
say it. It's easy for
Yeah.
the listeners.
Yeah. So I do wonder, like, would you say that I'm sorry, what was her name? Sonia?
Hmm. Yeah.
Is she like you at all, or would you say she's more like your ex-husband? Like, can you see why they are together?
Um, that's actually quite a good question. I think it's really, that's hard. As time goes on, I found that we talked about the couples less. So my husband and I, we don't, we very rarely talk about them now, of course. And we talked about them a lot. So the foundations were built on trying to understand who that other person was. And if there were similarities, you're absolutely right. There must be similarities for the attraction. Um, and I guess, my ex-husband was dark and tall, dark and handsome. And I would say that my current husband is tall, dark and handsome. So there's certainly a type that you go after. For me, I was curious about, probably I wanted to know more about her mothering style. And I used to sort of, I guess, talk to my stepdaughter about it. So I have an open on, conversation with her, with Ash, just to sort of say, I might sort of say, how would your mum do this or that? Because that was probably my curiosity, really. Not necessarily about being my ex husband's wife, I'm not interested to know in any way, but more about sort of the children and what interests her and what makes her tick, I suppose. So a little bit more deeper, a little bit more sort of on that side of things. But equally, then you have to go, why are you interested? So she doesn't do this and you do that. What does it matter? We are individuals and we are people. And at the end of the day, if everybody's happy, then and the kids are happy, then that's okay. And it was really funny because my stepdaughter has just got married, so she had her hen do a few months beforehand and invited, 19 friends and the mums. And we were all on a group chat together. And initially I thought, no, I'm not going to go because I don't want to, if I'm honest, I didn't think I wanted to kind of be in that female setting.
Yeah.
And then, um, so I had politely declined, that I could make the date. And I did talk to Ashley about it and said, this is what I'm feeling. And she was very sad. She didn't want me to feel that way, but absolutely acknowledged that if you're feeling that way, that's what it is. And then just before the day before the hen do, she came to see me, or came to see us and said, "Oh, it's the hen do tomorrow." And I just thought, do you know what? I've moved on so much in a few months space of seeing them a few times that I thought, yeah, I will go on the hen do. And it meant that we caught the train together from the same station. This is Sonia and I. We caught the train back together. We didn't necessarily sit together at the hen do, but we were part of the same event. And I was fearful of that. I'm not sure why. It was more in my head than actually being. And it was great. It was lovely. I was so pleased that I didn't, that feel the fear and do it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's really nice, because I know with other people, having blended families can be difficult and not everyone gets on. But it seems like the four of you have been able to manage raising these four children together, even though you weren't together. So, again, even that scenario. But how special is it that your kids were able to grow up with their parents?
Yeah,
That's something you don't
absolutely.
hear of that often. So, moving forward, how do you think situations are going to evolve with the two couples? Because obviously your children will move on, have children, get married. I mean, do you think eventually it's just going to, you'll all become one big happy family, or do you think you'll still keep it very separate?
Yeah, we will. I should imagine we will still keep it separate. It works now. You know, if either person needs to pick up the phone and, talk to the dad or the mum of that child, that's generally what our communication is about. Um, we don't share, I'm not on Instagram. I don't have those guys as my followers. I don't follow them. We keep our lives separately. Ironically, we live about 2 miles apart. So we live very close to each other, but we never see each other in the supermarkets or any of those sort of things. I know. Um,
Yeah,
so yeah, I think what works for us is we respect each other's privacy and space. But we come together when we need to and we're united. I would say that the four of us have managed. It's not always been easy. There have absolutely been challenges, both from a personal challenge. Do I really want to be in this? This is hard. To the challenge of this is a really weird situation, and I still think not so much now, but talking to you now makes me think. We wouldn't be having this conversation if it wasn't that for that situation. It was only yesterday I said to Emily, "I don't really know if I want to do this." Come on, so
oh,
I still get that kind of like anxiety that this unusual situation brings.
yeah, yeah, of
So
course. Well, it brings
it's
back all those feelings, doesn't it, from the
and that
beginning?
slightly, the gossip that people have about it because it's so unusual. We had a whole of a rugby
Absolutely.
club and all the different age years
Oh,
of the parents all gossiping for about 6 months. And then when some woman was telling me this story of how this couple swapped in the rugby club, I went, "Yeah, I'm the person," you know? And she was horrified. I
I
was
know,
like,
because people, yeah, they think swapping quite a salacious way of thinking of things, isn't it? But obviously it
well,
was far
everybody
from
has
the
their own
truth.
fantasies about it,
Yeah.
honestly. This woman was telling me this story, and I'm thinking, I'm the person in the story, and it really wasn't like what you're telling me.
Oh, no. Oh gosh. So they've added a few things to it, a few twists and turns. Oh,
Absolutely,
how
that Chinese
funny.
whispers.
Yeah. Well, look, what I love about having this platform to showcase people's stories, and yours was so different that I thought I just need for you to come on and share it, because it's a really rare story. You're not going to hear this time and time again. But what I'm really happy is the fact that both couples seem to be so happy and well adjusted, as well as your kids, as much as, we can
as
be.
they can be.
Um, yeah, exactly. But what a great ending to what started off as a little bit of a rocky story. But you both have found your happily ever after. And I think that is amazing. And now going, into your second act, you've got this great partner by your side. And, who
Absolutely.
would have thought 13 years ago that you'd be here today talking to me about this story?
Without a doubt. And I think one of the things that when you're in your late 20s, when Matt and I first met, I think without you even knowing it, you're actually looking for the perfect mate. You know, I'm not somebody who studied human behavior or anything like that, but it really feels like, you're looking for the man of your dreams, maybe, or the person who can be the father of your children, and all of those sort of things. But then I think when you kind of relaunch yourself in your 40s, you're looking for a friend. So actually, I felt that that was very different. I didn't deliberately go out, I don't want to have any more kids, it wasn't anything deliberate. But I would say, looking back now, I'm now married to my friend, a friend, rather than before I was married to my husband, if that makes any sense. Um, and I respect, admire, slightly envious of anyone who can get it right first time. Their perfect mate turns their husband becomes their friend, or their friends from the start. And I would say that, one of the things that Graham has never had the opportunity to do was have children together. And I think we talked about it in the early days. And at 43, I felt that my age was probably a bit risky to have, a child. And obviously, we had four perfectly healthy children. And there would have been an age gap, sort of 10 years, 11 years, and also, we were just straight into getting to know each other. The next thing is you just don't want to be thinking about children. That's just not how it goes. So we chose not to. But when our granddaughter arrived and she's just turned 1, seeing my husband hold a baby, because I've never seen that, I did have this kind of, it can't have been a regret because we made the decision not to do it. But I did think we didn't have that. We were fortunate to have those years where we shared that bond of having a child together. So, and I remember being really emotional about it. And I said to, again, talked about it. I said to Ash, my stepdaughter, who's, the mum of Isla, and I said, I've never seen your dad hold a child, that means something to him before, because we didn't get to do that together. So, but, you know, there are sacrifices you make, but all of us are in the right place now, I believe, in our lives to think about our next chapters. We're definitely thinking about that, where that might be. We both have Southern Hemisphere connections. My husband's grew up in South Africa. I spent a lot of time in Australia. So it's like, do we want to be in do, gloomy, grey England going into winter for the rest of
Yeah,
our lives? No, I don't think so. So, what does
yeah,
it look like? And that's the exciting part.
absolutely. Well, you never know, you might end up down under.
Oh, I hope so. I just
Well,
can't
thank
afford to buy
you.
a house.
Oh, no, it's insane, isn't it? Well,
Yeah.
but thank you, Fee, so much for
Oh,
sharing
you're
your story.
welcome.
I
I
I've
really
loved
enjoyed
it.
talking it through with you.
Oh, fantastic. Now, I love to conclude all my episodes with the same question. Sometimes a powerful quote can offer us guidance and insight. Is there a quote that has stuck with you throughout your life?
Yeah, the has. I'm a strong believer in quotes. I brought my kids up on quotes, um, which they often recite back to me along with the track. But I think mine is, if you always do what you've always done, you always get the same results. So it is about pushing it, doing something different, being brave, and having belief in yourself, because it will work out okay.
Yeah, that's right. But be brave and take a step.
Do you
Yeah,
know,
I love that one.
if I'd have fell at the first hurdle of this whole relationship, I wouldn't be here now. We wouldn't be talking. But, you know, my sister basically said, be brave, just do it.
And you haven't looked back.
Not at all.
Thanks, gorgeous. Wishing you all
Nice
the
to
best for
see
your
you.
second act. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Your Second Act. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you could rate and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback means the world to me.